Okay. I guess the stream can get started now, right? Okay, switch to the proper window. Is everything okay? Let me have a look. Yeah, okay, the stream looks good. I see there's a few people viewing. Cool. Well, welcome to the second official stream I'm doing. The last stream I did was a relative success because I mentioned it on that day that it's going to happen. So quite few, but valuable viewers showed up. So I decided to do this much more now in this situation. So I will be trying to do this much more often. My aim is to, well, try at least twice a week. I cannot promise that, but that's kind of my goal right now. So I'll be trying to do some kind of these quick and dirty AWS streams on Twitch here. Of course, all of these things are recorded automatically on Twitch, and I will also put them on my YouTube channel and share the link on social media or wherever, so you can pick that up if you wish to continue. So, with all that being good, I hope the sound is not too loud. I see a bit of peaking here. We can get started, right? So today's topic is AWS CloudFormation, or better yet, an intro to AWS CloudFormation. So we're going to try to build a CloudFormation template from scratch together. I'm going to talk a bit what is CloudFormation, what is infrastructure as code, and basically all the elements of a CloudFormation template anatomy. So what are each elements? Why should you use them? Why should you not use them? We're going to build a simple CloudFormation template. I'm going to have this all on GitHub later on. So if you want to pick up the template later, it's a super simple template, so nothing special. And also we're going to, check out some tooling later on, because there's some tools you should check out definitely when you start using CloudFormation. And yeah, mention some few things more. Again, I think it should be like an hour-ish. So again, feel free to stay along, follow along if you want. Chat is also open, so any suggestions are welcome. So first of all, who am I and why should you care? My name is Darko Mesros. I am a developer advocate here at AWS. I work a lot with developers from Central and Eastern Europe, also Russia and CIS. My job is to work with you developers and engineers on getting feedback to you and feedback from you. So I talk with you directly and get your inputs on some of our services so I can feed them back to our service teams, and hopefully they listen. Besides that, you will see me on a lot of conferences once this entire thing passes, and hopefully you will be able to see me online much more. So the plan for today, as I mentioned, infrastructure as code, CloudFormation, what is the template, how we build a template, what are the parts of the template, and once we have that all done, check out some tooling, maybe some CLI fun as well. Last time I did a stream on some CDK testing, so it's a bit more advanced stream. This is going to be a bit less advanced, more beginner friendly. So if you ever never dabbled in CloudFormation, this might be a great time for you to see how it all works. So let's talk about infrastructure as code. What is infrastructure as code? Well, simply put, with this entire, when we have the cloud, so let's have a look. So we have AWS, right? It's the cloud. We have so many things we can do in the cloud. So if you have a look at the services or like the services we offer, there's so many things here, right? You can launch all these, like from launching virtual machines to creating S3 buckets, to creating databases, to creating, satellite ground stations or machine learning events and whatever, right? So you can do all those things there. A traditional approach, or like when you first start AWS, you want to launch a virtual machine. That's kind of the first thing you do. You go here, click launch instance. Let's go here. I want Linux AMI. Click. I select which instance size I want. Review and continue. That's fine. I'm perfectly fine with these details. And just give me a second, and I can just click next here. I guess that's next. Sorry. Oops, I can click cancelled. And anyway, you can click all these things, launch an EC2 instance. That's all fun and that's great, but let me actually switch to this so I can see my screen. I cannot see my screen from this. So configure instance, add storage, add tags, security groups, review and launch, and click the launch button, and that's perfectly fine, right? This will create an EC2 instance for us, hopefully, and that works relatively fine, right? Now, this is also IAC, as people would like to say, but it's not infrastructure as code, it's infrastructure as click. So you get to click a lot of times. You see me there, I clicked 11 times, and I did my job, but if I want to repeat it right now, I need to do that again. So with infrastructure as code, what this brings us, it allows us to do all of these things. All of these, like I have decided to run an instance with Amazon Linux and this instance size, but I can write it all down in, let's say, a recipe or a little template. You write a template where you define how do you wish your infrastructure to look. So anything from your networking to your instance sizes, to databases, to machine learning, to satellite stations if you want, any kind of, most services on AWS are supported, and you can just define them. You basically describe how do you want them to look and run that template or pass on that template to a service I'll mention on, the topic of the stream. And then that service can basically create all those elements and manage all those elements to an extent on your behalf. So that's pretty good, right? And a lot of people tell me, I'm starting out. I don't want to work with CloudFormation or any infrastructure as code because it takes a lot of effort to do it, But trust me, in the long run, if you start with CloudFormation and you make your first thing in CloudFormation or Terraform or CDK, it doesn't matter which one, right? If you start with infrastructure as code, it will be much more easier to follow along, build on that, repeat it, replicate it, create developer environments, modify it, and actually track what you're doing, right? One of the benefits of infrastructure as code, and I repeat myself on this a lot, is that you get to treat your infrastructure as code, right? So you get to apply all the best practices, all the tooling, all the things we have in application development to infrastructure development. Yeah. So things such as source code repositories, right? You store your infrastructure in a Git repository. You can version it. Wow, it's no longer I made a change one day and it's just a change that happens on a day-to-day basis. You make versions of your infrastructure, which is pretty cool. You can also apply testing, best practices. For example, you can use a proper, CI/CD pipeline to move your infrastructure changes along with tests, verifications, like unit testing. You can make some integration testing, launch your infrastructure changes into a developer or a testing environment where you can actually see, does this work for you or not? And then you can deploy it to production. Again, all the best practices from software and application development we can apply to infrastructure as code or infrastructure development right now. So what is infrastructure as code? Yeah, it's defining your infrastructure as code, right? Why? You can apply all the benefits of application development. You can repeat yourself. You can easily create deployment, different types of deployments from testing to production. And who should use infrastructure as code? Everybody, right? Doesn't matter which one you use, you should use it. Try to give yourself the opportunity to learn any sort of CloudFormation, any sort of infrastructure as code tooling, not necessarily CloudFormation, and it will be to your benefit. But today, we will be talking about CloudFormation. So what is CloudFormation? CloudFormation in itself is a service that helps you set up AWS resources, right? So it's our infrastructure as code native services. So what you do here, you pass it along a template, right? A template, something like a YAML, if you are a human person, or JSON if you're a robot, right? You can write these templates into two formats, YAML and JSON. You write your infrastructure in these templates, you pass it along to CloudFormation, and then CloudFormation creates resources on your behalf. All the best practices I mentioned before, all the things you do with infrastructure as code is available on CloudFormation. And if you see here, this is the CloudFormation dashboard with a couple of stacks I have created here. Some of them are currently in deleting, some of them have failed, but yeah. So let's actually have a look at I have a finished template that I'm going to be basing my what we're doing today on. But let me just give you a quick peek on what this template looks like, right? So this is a YAML CloudFormation template. So in this case, it creates one EC2 instance, it creates a Lambda function, and it creates an IAM role in AWS, right? So instead of me clicking all the buttons you've seen me do on the AWS console, you can just create this, pass this template on to CloudFormation, and it will hopefully create resources on your behalf. So what other tools exist, right? I mentioned it's not only CloudFormation. You know, we have tools such as, in my previous stream, we have tools such as CDK. We have tools such as Terraform. Absolutely, a lot of people use Terraform. I love the Terraform language or Terraform syntax. There's Troposphere. People do this in SAM, right? Serverless or SAM, serverless application model, is also kind of like infrastructure as code. You have, you know, people can use Chef and Puppet and Ansible for these things as well. So there's a lot of different types and different vendors out there, so it's your choice. But at the end of the day, all of them kind of boil down to a similar concept, which is don't click, but type your code, right? Okay, let's get started. So what we want to do first, let me just grab my water. What we want to do first is build our first template, right? So, and let's have a look at the template anatomy. So let's do it here, like this. First template. So let's create a file. I'm going to do this in YAML because it's much easier for me to do this in YAML rather than doing it in JSON. There's pros and cons to each. You know, JSON, you can put it in a single line. You can pass it on as a string. But it's, you know, difficult to comment on. It's impossible to comment on JSON. A YAML is much more readable, as you haven't seen before. But also, it has these tabs, and you can have a lot of tab issues as well. But let's start it. Our first template.yaml. Now, one thing I need to mention here: this is not an executable file, so there's no shebang there. There's it's a YAML file which you actually pass it on to CloudFormation. So this is just a text file in essence, which gets parsed by CloudFormation. So let's have a look at the different parts of a CloudFormation template, right? So first thing that we have to do is, and this is an optional thing, but I would highly advise it, is this thing called AWS template format version. So AWS. Right. So this is an optional thing in your CloudFormation template, but I would always put it just so you can be ready for potential, you know, legacy issues if at one point we actually change the format version, because currently 2010-09-09 is the only one we have, and there's no other version you can do. It can only be a literal string like this, so you have to pass it on like this manually. Again, not required, it's optional, but hey, you know, you can add it as well. Next thing, it's definitely optional, but it's highly advisable. So is the description, right? So you wanna add a description here to what is your template, right? I can just do a inline here. You know, this is my template. But let's be a bit more creative. So I can do it with this and do, you know, this is a template used for a Twitch stream, right? Let me, HTTPS, of course, Twitch. Awesome. That's the description. Again, it's just a, let's say, a text field where you can enter a description of your template. What does it do? It will actually show up on the AWS console. So if we have a look here, wait, not that one. Let's have a look at this. It will show up here as a description like so, right? So if you open it up here, you should have a description, nice, like here. Awesome. So next thing, Metadata. Now, metadata exists, but we're not going to be using it here. It can be used. It's also optional. Metadata is just for example, if you wish to add arbitrary, configurations to, for example, like cfn-init, right? Cfn-init is this object, or it's a helper for AWS, for CloudFormation to configure things on your EC2 instance. So you can add configuration tasks to cfn-init or the AWS : CloudFormation : init resource. You can add it in metadata. So in this case, we're not going to be doing that because it kind of goes beyond this stream. Next part, and this is a very important part, are parameters, right? So parameters, believe it or not, are super optional. So you don't have to add parameters at all to your template. It's not required. It's something that you can leave out. And to be fair, a lot of people leave out and kind of hard code things into their parameters, or use something else like parameter store. But in this case, I highly advise that you use parameters in any means, because that way you can make your CloudFormation template relatively agnostic, in a sense that it can be used in multiple occasions. It can be used in development environments. It can be used in production. You can modify things such as EC2 instance sizes, or maybe modify certain permissions, or I don't know, like access keys or PEM keys for EC2 instance access, for example. And we will be using them in this case. Now, how does a parameter look? Basically, it looks like any resource you would create. You would first give it a logical name, like instance type. Now, this is a logical name. This name is referenceable within the template. So the name of this parameter is instance type. I can define a value or a type of a parameter, right? And this is also important because there's different kinds of value you can define, and you get different requirements or different benefits when you use different parameter types. In this case, I'm using a string, and string is just a super simple, hey, just pass me a little string of characters, and I will use that later on in the template. But now I just need to make this a bit looking nicer, like that. Okay, it's YAML. We need to be sure that we use. We need to be sure that we use proper tabbing. But let me do this as well. Awesome. So again, there's an option called description, which is, well, a description. You should put this, right. Right, instance type. I'm saying this parameter actually sets the instance type for your instance that we're going to be launching. You can set up a default value, right? Default, and this value will be taken if you launch your CloudFormation template without this parameter overridden, right? So if I do not define any parameter when I launch this CloudFormation template, it will always default to the default value. But also, one of the things we can do, and this is a great thing in order to give us control over our CloudFormation template, is by giving it like allowed values. So if I do allowed values, now this is where I can actually define certain things. For example, you can only set 3T micro or T3, I don't know, small. Maybe I can do also A1 medium and A1 large, right? So only these three values will be accepted when taking this parameter into case, right? Let me just now, with the magic power of copy and paste instead of me typing it, because this is not a typing simulator, I want to do something like this and paste another parameter. This parameter name is key pair. Right, so this is basically a key pair, an EC2 instance key pair that we can use to add to our EC2 instances, so we can access them remotely through SSH or RDP. One of the things you can see here is the type of the key pair is not the string. You can absolutely put a string, right? But in this case, I've selected AWS EC2 key pair key name so that we can be a bit more precise. And if you do this through the web console, you will actually see a drop down of all of your keys in that region, in that account, if you have set this parameter as such. Awesome. So that does it for parameters. So now, next thing we need to move on is mappings. And this is something people don't use enough. Mappings is basically a way to map certain key values to certain keys to values, right? For example, let's say I have a template that launches, EC2 instances, and I want to make sure that I can launch this template in any region where I want, right? I can launch them in any of my regions. What is the thing that changes when we launch EC2 instances across regions? AMI IDs, right? So Amazon Machine Image ID, so the images that you launch EC2 instance from change from region to region. Now, instead of me hard coding that value or setting a parameter, I can set up a mapping that maps my AMIs to a specific region, right? Or for example, I can even go further, that a type of an AMI for a certain type of EC2 instance, for example, an AMI for an ARM-based EC2 instance like A1 you see here, or T3 as an x86 instance, are not the same. So I can use mappings to automatically pick AMI IDs based on the region or on the instance type. So let's do that. Let's do the first thing. Let's map an AMI to a region, or let's do that. So mappings, and let's create a mapping called AMI region map. Let's do US West 2, right? I have these things already noted down, so I don't have to look it up. But in essence, you go US West 2, and I will add two types of instances. Of instances, I will add the x86, and I will add the ARM version, so we can pick and choose between those two. And you will see later on how we choose between those two when we get to conditionals, which is also a very underused part in AWS CloudFormation. So HVM64 is kind of the key code for the x86 type instances. And I will actually just, instead of doing that, let me go here, insert, paste. Awesome. Now, one thing you need to do, because it's YAML. If you do not leave this spot here, it will show up as a broken YAML file. Oh, there we go. So this is for US West 2. So I have an HVM64 and an HVM-G2, which is the ARM-based instance, and I have two AMI IDs specified for these instance types. Now, where do you get those AMI IDs? Well, simply you go to your EC2 management console like this. Okay, let me move myself away. You go to launch an instance like that. And here's the x86 version of it, right? In the Ireland region. And here's the ARM AMI ID for the Ireland region, right? Simple as that. So I have the same things here for Ireland. Let me add the additional mapping. And as you can see here, currently we have only support for US West 1. Now, in order to add support for Ireland or EU West 1, I can just paste that part here. So the same case. We have AMI region map for AMIs in US West 2 and EU West 1. And this now, later on in the template, I can use these mappings to actually pick my instance, AMI IDs for my instance, depending on the type and depending on the region. Now, I mentioned this, that we're going to try to do this based on, for example, an instance type. How do we do that? How would we manage to, select, for example, ARM-based instance in CloudFormation, or an ARM-based AMI in CloudFormation compared to like an x86 based off the choice we pick here? Because if you see here on the parameter side, So going back here. So these values are basically, this allows us to pick which instance type we're going to use. So if we pick T3 or if we pick T3 small or micro, that's x86. If we pick A1 medium or large, that's ARM. So different AMIs have to be used for those. But how do we go about that? This is where we introduce conditionals, right? And conditionals are basically a feature of CloudFormation that allows you to make conditions. If something is true, that condition is, or if you can do like comparison. If this is equal to that, or this is equal to that, and that, and that, and that, right? You can make this logical statements. Then something is true, or then something is false. And based off if something is true or false, you can do certain things here. For example, how can I, based off of these allowed values, choose which instance type will be launched, right? So I can create two conditionals. I can create conditional that I am creating an x86 instance, and the conditional that I'm creating an ARM-based instance. So in this case, if one conditional is true, a certain resource will be created and the other one will not. So let's do this. There's a lot to write, but I will create one. I will show you one the first, and I'll just copy paste the second one. So conditions. Let's do the condition for creating an ARM resource, right? Create ARM resources. Awesome. So the condition, it's basically I need an OR condition, because I have two values, A1 and A1 medium and A1 large. Either one of those, if are true, these the conditional for create ARM resources will be true as well. So I need this to be equals, and then reference instance type. Now, this instance type is actually the parameter I have set in the CloudFormation template on line 7. Has to be value of A1 medium. Or I need to do equals ref A1 large, right? And this and that. Now, if you have a look at this this condition, right? What we have said here that this condition is true if either or one of these is true, right? So if this equals, so if this equals is true, or if this equals is true, right? One of the two needs to be true for this conditional to be true as well. Now, once that conditional is true, we can do something later on with it. Now, let me actually copy paste the other conditional, because I need another conditional to say, hey, you know what? We're creating x86 instances. So how to do that? Well, simple. I'll just paste it here like that. Awesome. It's the same thing. So in this case, I have an OR statement. Instance type can be either T3 micro or T3 small. Now, unfortunately, this is, it requires a lot of, typing. It's not as flexible as some other programming languages. For example, some other IC tooling can be a bit more flexible in logic in this case. On CloudFormation, it's a bit more stiff, but it gets us the solution, right? So in this case, we create two conditions, creating ARM or x86 resources that can be either true or false. Now, later on, once I get into the resources, the most important part of a CloudFormation template, this is where we're gonna get to looking into how do we use these conditionals actually. So, okay, resources, right? So what are resources? Can anybody guess? It's, well, the resources. It's the big thing. It's the thing that you can basically leave everything else out of a template and add just resources, and your template would work, right? So it's actually where you define your resources or the things you wish to create. You define a resource, you define its properties, you give it a logical name, and this is where the magic happens. This is where you convert clicks to lines of code. So how do we get started? Well, type resources. Right? Next thing you need to do, let's create an EC2 instance. But because we have an option of creating an EC2 instance or x86 instance or an ARM instance. So we will create two instance objects or two instance resources, and based on which condition is true, we will create one or the other, right? That's how it works in CloudFormation. So let's add an x86 instance here, right? My EC2 instance x86, not x86, x84, x86. So this is the logical name of an instance. Again, pretty similar like on all other things. What we need to do first here is define a type, right? What kind of resources are we creating here? Because the CloudFormation doesn't know what EC2 instance is from your logical name. So again, like before on parameters, we have specific AWS type names, and this is something you will be looking at a lot in your CloudFormation journey. So EC2 instance is AWS EC2, and you guessed it, instance. So this is a type, and this specific type accepts specific values of parameters, right? So let's add parameters, right? What kind of parameters can we add? So, for example, what would be the instance type or the instance size that we have? We can do instance type. We can do, T3 micro, right? But let's actually use parameters that we have created. So what you do here is you go click ref, you reference a certain parameter, instance type. So this will actually reference the parameter we have set up on line 7. So what is the next parameter we can add? Key name, right? So we want to add the key name which you have defined in, ref key pair, right? Simple as that. Now, let's use mappings. So for mappings, we need to do something special, right? So there's some built-in intrinsic functions to CloudFormation that people can use to do things with mappings. For example, if I want to use an image ID, right? When I say image ID, I mean an AMI image ID. So instead of manually typing it or referencing it as in a region map, I need to do some functions to actually find it in a map based on a specific value, such as, for example, a region or an instance type. So in this case, I can use a function called find-in-map. Find-in-map, and then give it some parameters. AMI region map, that's the name of the map. Then pass it on something ref. I will pass it on a parameter which I didn't create. Now this parameter is actually a pseudo parameter. It actually just specifies a region where this CloudFormation template is being launched in. So it will automatically detect, hey, this CloudFormation template is being launched in US West 2 or EU West 1 or whatever region you launch it in. And I will also pass it in a specific parameter called hvm64, this is how I define, hey, this is an x86 instance that I wish to run. So based off the parameters of a region and hvm64, it will actually make a choice. If it's in EU West 1, it will make it, make sure to use this one and not this one. Awesome. So have I typed that correctly? It looks good. Yeah. So I have an image ID. Now, one last thing I need to add here is the condition, right? So let's use the condition here. So it's super simple. If I just add a thing here called condition, and just reference or just put the logical ID, create x86 resources, right? If this condition is true, this resource will be created. If this condition is not true, it will not be created. So this is a simple way how can we, specify, hey, do not create this EC2 instance if this is not if this condition is not true, right? This is a weird example that I'm using, but a lot of times when people use conditions is when they would like to have, like, for example, a parameter called dev or prod that you can actually, if a certain condition is true that this environment is in dev, maybe create a smaller instance rather than a big instance. Or for example, if this is a prod, you might add a specific, high ops volume to your EC2 instance instead of use the normal one. In this case, I'm just gonna pick one of the two, depending on which parameter I've chosen. Now, let's, I think that's okay. Let's copy all of this and create another instance. In this case, let's create an ARM instance for the same thing, right? My EC2 instance ARM. Now, condition is different, right? ARM instances. Keep pair instance type is all the same. Now, the only thing is I'm going to change here is instead of using this AMI, I'm going to use the G2 AMI. And that's it. We now have a CloudFormation template that will launch 2 EC2 instances. Based on, it will launch either or, right? Depending on which condition has been filled, depending on what instance type have it chosen. So either ARM or x86, and it will choose the appropriate AMI based off of that as well, right? So that's one thing, right? Now, let's talk about something else. So this is super simple. Creating resources like this is a first thing people do. Either create an S3 bucket, SQSQ, SNS topic, an EC2 instance. But it's 2020. People talk about serverless, and we need to create Lambda functions. Now let's have a look. How do you create a Lambda function on CloudFormation? So let's have a look here. If we go, shall we scroll all the way? Find Lambda function. Cool. Oh, that's a lot of things here. So you can do things here like you can take this and create a Lambda function. Pass it some code as well. Do all those fancy things, but maybe we can make it better, right? Maybe we can use something else in CloudFormation that will make our lives easier on us. So I mentioned SAM before. No, I'm not going to be talking about SAM, but I'm going to just talk about some element of SAM that we have kind of made available within CloudFormation. And that's called transforms, right? So transforms is just another element of CloudFormation that allows you to, add specific transforms or macros to your CloudFormation template. For example, if I add a serverless transform to my CloudFormation template, it will allow me to create specific resources in a much more, let's say, cloud native way. It gives a lot of assumptions, or it gives you a lot of, let's say, recommendations and best practices how to create a specific resource inside of your CloudFormation template instead of doing it all manually. So let me actually do this. I need to add a transform. I like to keep these things on the top of my CloudFormation template. So right here on line 6, I will add transform, and I will add the transform called AWS serverless, and I just need to add the date. I believe this is the only date so far that exists, right? This is how you would do it. So by adding this line right here, we have basically imported specific macros or specific resource types that are not natively available on CloudFormation, right? So if I, let's say, want to create a Lambda function right now, what I can do is here, just do something like this. Let me do this, called my serverless function. Is that the name? Functions. Type. Now, instead of using AWS CloudFormation, I can just use AWS serverless function. So the AWS serverless macro or transform holds a lot of different types, but we're going to be using the AWS serverless function in this case. So, and properties, I'm going to be doing a couple of them. Handler, index.python. No, not Python. What? Index.handler. index.handler, is that the correct piece of code? Yes, it is. Runtime is actually Python 3.7. And finally, I need to pass it some code. Now, what I can do here is I can just pass it a URL of an S3 bucket where I keep my code for my zip file, right? So S3 like that. I have the my deployment package.zip, and that's it. Now, once if all this is correct, right, this should actually create a Lambda script or a serverless function directly with the code present in that S3 bucket, right? So, and I mean, it's just a simple, it's just a single one file Lambda script. Actually, let me show this to you. If I go here, this is the, if I go to working example, zip l, so it contains only a single a lambda script called indexpy, which is just a hello world Lambda function, nothing special. Okay, so we have created a serverless function thanks to our serverless transforms. So this, in essence, gave us the ability to create a simple function without using the native CloudFormation resources here. Much more simpler. It's just a couple of lines, couple of parameters, and we have a function. One more resource I will create, and this is just to demonstrate something. It's not about the resource, but these resources you will most likely create a lot. Let me just copy paste because it's a pretty long resource. So copy like that, paste. So this is just a role in our AWS account. Nothing special. So again, type is I am role. We create an assume role policy. We have the actual policy. It's like a root role. It gives an allow for everything, right? So nothing special. So in essence, we have created our first template. Now, let's see if this works. Again, now I have typed this. I have a working example of this one, and this one is just typed out. So let's see if this works. Right? There could be some problems. So how you create it, right? How do you actually, once you have written your first template, you go to the CloudFormation template. You go to stacks. You click create stack with resources standard. You just kind of, I have the template ready. I will upload the template file. Pick my template file from my workspace here. Right, there we go. Awesome. Let's see. I'll move my face. Seems all good. Nothing is broken because it will usually complain here if YAML is broken. Click next. I will add the stack name. I will call it stream stacking 101. I will use the, let's go ARM. Why not? And so see, I mentioned you can use these values. This is where we have set those allow values. So it gives you this drop-down list of which one you can choose. Also for the key pair, because I have used the key pair type, it actually shows me all the key pairs I have available within my region in this account. So I click next. Nothing here, a couple of things I can tag, tag resources in my stack specific here. I can maybe add an optional role. This rollback configuration is great if you want to, check while deploying. Stack creation options are here. Like this is for debugging. If you have a problem with your CloudFormation stack and it keeps, failing, disable rollbacks. You can check, for example, what actually went bad on an EC2 instance, for example, when launching. Click next. Now, a couple of things here. Because I am creating, the serverless function is creating, potentially some resources such as permissions from the Lambda functions and whatnot. I need to check that I acknowledge that this CloudFormation might create some resources like that as well. If I could create stack, hopefully this works. Right, so now with SAP, it has, okay, no. Property, rollback, resource, invalid template, resource, property, parameters. What did I do? welcome to live debugging. My name is Darko, and this is what we do. So, parameters, do I break something here? Invalid, template, resource property, parameters, rollback. What did I do? I bet somebody was screaming at me when I was doing this. Parameters. I will spend a couple of seconds here looking at this. Not, there we go. It's not parameter, it's properties. Okay. Bravo. Properties. Okay, cool. Going back. This is rolled back because nothing has been created. So let us delete the stack again. Let's go create the stack, standard procedure, upload the template file, click here, go back, next, again, A1 medium, I'll use this key pair, stack name, testing stacks 101. You have to be creative with those names. Click it next. Next. Confirm the might create IAM resources with custom names. Awesome sauce. Click. And let's have a look at my face if this doesn't work. Refresh. Awesome, cool. So we have passed that port. And actually, as you can see here, the ARM resource or ARM instance is actually being created here. So it's not creating an x86 instance. We have actually fulfilled one of our conditions that we have an A1 instance selected. And it's done. So it has created my EC2 instance. It has created my serverless function and had created a role for that serverless function. And it also has created a root role, the thing I have created here. So if I look at the function here, you will see that it has actually just pulled in that simple Python script I have on S3. Cool, that's awesome. Now, you see me, battle with broken CloudFormation templates here, right? You see me, oh, that doesn't work. That's just, you see me have to go delete and do that again. Once you start doing things like this, you're gonna keep doing that a lot. You're gonna keep, retrying your CloudFormation templates, and that's not the best thing in the world. So let's talk about some tooling that can help you avoid that. First thing I'm gonna do is delete the stack so I can do something later on. So let's break our template again. So if I go here and I just do my same mistake as before, parameter. That's okay. It doesn't matter, right? So if I go to here, we can use a couple of tools here, right? So first tool you will definitely need to use is called cfn-lint. So I actually have it open here. Yes, so CloudFormation lint. Now this is a tool that is basically a CloudFormation linter. So it goes through your template, validates the template, are all the properties and values in their place, etc., etc. It will give you this first-hand look. Does this all work, right? If I do cfn-lint and then give it to, what is the name of our first template, it will say, you have broken something, right? So, well, first of all, I don't have properties defined here, but also invalid resource attribute parameters for this resource, right? Instead of me spending all those clickety clicks, I can just go here and, run cfn-lint and fix this. If I do it again, it's gonna complain again because I don't have parameters set here, but yeah, there's a way to do that. So there you go, simple as that. Awesome. The next tool is something, the reason I have put this root resource here, right? So if you have a look at here, the root role, there's a reason why I put it on there. So the next tool I want to talk about is called cfn-nag. Now cfn-nag comes from Stelligent. It's a tool that looks for, potential security, insecure infrastructure patterns inside of the CloudFormation templates, such as open ports, having the ability to have your egress and ingress ports open to the world, right? Have not encryption enabled where you can potentially, passwords in your template, or in my case, have a bad IAM policy, right? I have created a role. So one of the things I can do here is just check if my role is bad or not, right? If you have a look at my role, there might be a problem. So cfn-nag, template file, I believe. Actually, let me not guess. I can just do this. cfn-nag, yes. Actually, that's the working template one. Let's do this. I see in chat somebody says that update works on stacks now. Oh, very cool. I have not even tested that, because before, if your stack fails, you have to delete it and run it again. So an update to my terminology here. You don't have to delete a stack. You can just update it with the latest CloudFormation template. So I'll test that out for sure. Thank you, Mr. 10599. Well, yes. So cfn-nag. cfn-nag, and just point it to our first template. It will fail, right? Why does it fail? So it detects that IAM role should not allow star resource with pastoral action to permission policy, or should not allow all actions to its permission policies. Now, this is absolutely not the best practice to create resources that have such a massive permissive, wide open, hey, you know what, this has access, all permissions to all things. So this is something you should definitely try to avoid when doing it. And cfn-nag is this tool that will, mention this and fix this on your behalf, or not fix, but it will just let you know, hey, on line 59, there's a problem there. So in order to fix that, let's go back to the template, like this, not that. Let's go back to the template, and what we can do here is just change the action to something else, right? Let's make like this, and let's add a couple of actions. S3 get. This is just a read-only S3 policy, and then let's do something like S3 list, right? So now we have removed that. We still have a resource for everything, which is potentially fine, but we only have the read options here set. So if I would run cfn-nag again, there's no errors. It just gives me out the warning that it should not allow on all resources. Again, it's not something that it's potentially a problem, but it's not. It doesn't have to be, right? It's just a warning, so it doesn't fail this out. Now, these tools, besides just using them on your laptop like myself, you can apply these tools to your pipelines, right? So if you have a pipeline, you can add these things to your testing parts of your pipeline, CI/CD pipeline, and this is where you can test your CloudFormation templates that are actually not broken potentially, or secure, or vulnerable, and all those things, right? So pretty useful tooling. I highly advise that you do this. I don't have it set it up here, but on Visual Studio Code, there's also a cfn-lint plugin where it will automatically check your code against cfn-lint, just so it will every time you save it, it will say, this is not a good, or this is bad. So if you use Visual Studio Code, that's a great tool you can use. Okay, now what do I want to do now? Yes, there's a couple of other tools I want to mention before I go. And these tools are great for people getting started. It's actually, those are tools not built by AWS. It's built by somebody else. And one of those tools is, let me open this, like Chrome Web Store. It's a Chrome plugin called Console Recorder. Console Recorder. Now, what does this tool do? It's a magic tool, right? When I saw this first, oh my God. So what it does, it enables you to basically click the record button, and this tool will record, it will record everything you do in CloudFormation to an extent, and convert it to like a Python script, or a CloudFormation template, or Terraform, Troposphere, maybe some CDK, CLI, a lot of different things. Again, it's not perfect. It doesn't work on all resources, but to get started, wow, right? So let me try to show you this. Now I have not tested this in a while, so let's do this. I have the screen recorder enabled here. So if I click here, start recording, you can see the little rec button there. So launch an instance. Launch an instance. I will select Linux AMI like this. I will select T2 large because it's Christmas. Let me move my face away. Configure instance details. I will leave it in the default VPC. Do I need to? I will add it a role. Fuck it. I'll just add the blank role here. That's okay. Let's go. Add storage. I will change the storage size to 30 gigabytes. I will add some tags by name. This cloud recorder. Configure security group. I'll just leave it as is. Actually, you know what? No, I'll add it to an user group I have here. You know what? No, let's not complicate this. It's a default VPC. I'll just let it create a new user group. And I'll call it cloud record. And this is super secure because you allow port 22 to open to the internet. And that was a joke. Review and launch. Click launch. I will select Arco EU West. I will launch instances. Click. Awesome. Now, if I click stop recording, awesome. So it has created something, right? There's a Bodo thing. Like it basically collected all the calls I have made to AWS, and this could potentially be good for you to get some potential Bodo code. But what's better here? Like it creates an EC2 instance like this. It basically generated a CloudFormation template like so. It creates a security group, it creates an EC2 instance, and that's it, like that. Again, it doesn't work on all things, but it's a really neat way to get started. You know, if you want to CDK, I'm not sure if this works. Yeah, like here's a stack. Here's a stack that creates an EC2 instance by using TypeScript on CDK. Simple as that. Wow, right? For all the Terraform fans, here it is. It's a really neat tool. I really like what they did with this thing. Again, you should. This is great for you to get started, but I wouldn't potentially use this like on a massive production scale because you potentially want some more control over these templates. But you know, if you want a boilerplate template, like hey, I want something to get started with, here you go. Copy paste and go with it. Next tool, actually from the same people, is a tool called Former2. It's basically CloudFormer 2. We had a service called CloudFormer, or I'm not sure if we still do, but it's basically it was a tool that would go through your infrastructure on AWS, connect it all, and generate a CloudFormation template out of it. Which was okay, but it wasn't working the best thing. Now, Former 2 is a tool that does that kind of, right? So you connect it to your AWS account, you give it read-only properties to your AWS account, it can scan it, and it can generate CloudFormation outputs from your AWS account, right? So let me go to its GitHub page because again, it's an open source project. Feel free to have a look here. It's pretty cool. Again, it generates CloudFormation templates from selected resources inside of your account. It's super cool. They even have like helper scripts for Firefox and Chrome, which is required on some things. But again, you create an IAM key pair, you give it only read-only access, and it can do CloudFormation, Terraform, Troposphere, and TypeScript CDK, but with CloudFormation primitives, which is something specific. It's pretty cool. Again, it comes from the same people that do console recorder. I'm a big fan of this. Again, it's not AWS built, but it's a great tool to get you started with doing some CloudFormation. Last but not least, I want to just give you another quick little advice how to deploy CloudFormation templates. Again, you can do all the clickety clicks, and but I'm a big fan of doing it through the CLI. So if I do, let me see. AWS CloudFormation. Okay, cool. So if you have a look here, this command line is basically, this is AWS CLI, uses the deploy command to deploy a stack called test deploy with a template file at some specific location with some specific parameters. And if I do this, it will do it all for me. It will create a change set. It will basically trigger the deployment of this CloudFormation template from the command line. If you do something fast, if you keep testing out your CloudFormation template on your command line, it's potentially much easier like this to deploy than go through all the clickety clicks you have to go do on the CloudFormation web console. And yeah, it's going to create update to complete, and that's it, right? So if I would go back to the CloudFormation template here, CloudFormation console, there you go, it's done. So this is the one I have just created now through the CLI. Super simple. Of course, I want to mention, besides this, I want to mention CDK, which is our Cloud Development Kit, and SAM, which is a serverless application model, which are all built on top of CloudFormation. So they all use CloudFormation as the end product, but they have their own set of predefined, let's say, assumptions or way they do things. So people ask me which one should I use. Have a look. What's easier for you? They have their pros and cons. You know, sometimes it's much more obvious what you're doing in CloudFormation because you can see it all. Well, it's much more easy to do some things in CDK, for example. So I plan to do much more on these things later down the line. Now, speaking of that, I actually have done something here. I want to get your input. I see like 15 people on the stream here. Maybe I can do something and give you the poll. Maybe what should we do else? What should we do next? What would be the best way to type this in? Because I'm doing this from three computers. Straw poll.me. Oh, Montenegro. 195288887. If you want to go on that straw poll and maybe see what we want to do next time, right? Throw your vote there. What should I do on the next stream? Let me know. I'll leave this straw poll up for, I'm not sure how long can it stay. But yeah, I'm happy. I plan to do this stream twice a week in the coming weeks, absolutely. And any suggestions, any feedback, please feel to let me know either through Twitter, through this thing, or LinkedIn, wherever you can find me. I would be happy to talk to you a bit more. It's a mix of things. Again, if there's something else, please let me know directly. What is that something else you would like me to talk about? Cool. Now, thank you very much for joining. And I hope to see you next time. I plan to do this again on Tuesday. I still don't know what the topic is, but again, maybe based off the votes on this straw poll or something on Twitter, I'll let you know in advance. Thank you very much once again. Hope to see you again, next week. Bye-bye.